Good evening and salutations, my GH fans. Let's talk about Ryan and Adler. Because I'm not gonna lie, I felt like that was probably the most interesting part about this episode. Heather's not there just calling Ryan out on the fact that, she doesn't feel that he's paralyzed, he's just not there faking and everything like that. She's like, I know you and everything. And finally he starts to talk. They get into that backstory, like how they knew each other back then. They were really hot and heavy. Her name was Hazel. I forgot what the hell his name was. But towards the end of it, after all the threats and Heather slapping him and everything like that, um, Ryan was like, you didn't just break my heart when you left. You took our child along with you. Now, granted, again, they didn't sit there and confirm it was Esme, but I would sit there and say maybe 80%. 80%. I'm like 80% sure that they're talking about Heather. I mean, that they're talking about, what? Screw it. I would sit there and say maybe 95. Because they did sit there and say two. I could have swore I heard them sit there and say two reasons or two something. But again, I would sit there and say about 90% I'm sure that it's Esme that they're talking about. Now, Rory is giving a lot of people, including me, a lot of lifetime vibes, 3 months anniversary, Hemsworth they're talking about he loves her, Hemsworth they're buying this expensive gift, and Spencer just standing there like a creep. Um, like literally standing over his shoulder while he's there talking. He's like, yo, what's going on? He turns around, he's like, oh. And I'm like, I would have just said, oh, I would have been like, yo, bro, you need to sit there and give me some space. What are you doing? Now, at some point of this interaction, Victor pretty much is like, you're a cast aka you get to act like a spoiled rich prick, and just take whatever you want. And when Rory makes a call, Spencer's like, could we try again? I'm like, what do you mean, could we try again? Yo, you practically, I mean, granted, her just meeting you burnt down her life. Why was she going to sit there and start over again with you? And of course, in the previews, she's not there talking to Ava like, you need to stop me from doing something stupid. I'm like, boo. The fact that he's out there, spending money on you, taking you fancy restaurants, buying you expensive gifts, and they're talking about he loves you. No, I think we're way past that at this point. You need to sit there and either tell him the truth, or I don't know. No, he's a cop, upstanding against the law and towards the law and everything. But I'm like, people got emotions, and this dude looked like he's going to flip out at some point if she doesn't feel what he feels. I mean, granted, she was like, granted, he was like, you don't have to say right now, but I mean, come on now. After a while, it's just gonna get kind of awkward. The fact that he even said it right then and there, he was like, I'm very stoic, and it's very hard for me to sit there and have emotions or say stuff out loud. It's like, bro, it's been 3 months, and you just said you loved her. The hell? No, that's no. But of course, Trina tells, I was about to say Victor or Vincent, tells Spencer like, listen, too much stuff has happened. I don't even know if we can go back. Now, at some point, Victor is standing in standing in Rory's way, talking about, oh, well, you do the smart thing and leave or whatever. I'm like, man, if you don't get your old, you don't get your old stuff out his way. But he wraps things up. Like he comes back there and Spencer's just sitting there and he's like, yo, is there a problem? He's like, no. He says something, he's like, oh, you have a good night, and he walks off and, she takes he takes her home because, apparently she gotta be home before like 10 or whatever, so that happens. At least he's not there trying to be somewhat of a good boyfriend, but he is just hella creepy. Now, Josh winds up getting into it, gets into it with Nina. Nina opens the door and Josh is like, what are you doing here? I'm like, what do you mean, what is she doing here? Like, are you gonna walk in somebody else's house and sit there and ask her, what are you doing here? I'm with Donna. Oh, my mom said that, you can't sit there and spend any time with her. Yeah, well, we changed the arrangement. And of course, Josh gets into her usual hypocritical stuff. You took Sonny off my mom's hand, this, that, and the third. He's a bad person, blah, 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 blah. And of course, Nina's like, I didn't mean to sit there and keep him so long. I fell in love with her, in love with him. The usual, let's just make up excuses. I mean, she does kind of own it to some extent, but not really. She admits what she did was wrong, but she doesn't really seem like she's too sincere about it. And I think that's just because, she's had to explain herself so many times to so many people about what she did that at this point she's just like, all right, like she's just done. She's just done with the apologies and the sympathetic facial expressions and whatever. At some point, they're talking, and Josh is sitting there thinking about Dex, and she just out of nowhere is like, "I'm not like you," and Nina's like, yeah, I didn't." I didn't say that. Like, where did that come from? Of course, Josh tries to cover it up and just sounds even more crazier than when she first said it. So she tries to explain herself, and it just sounds worse, to be honest. But Sonny gets back home. Dex gets there. Dex sees Josh, and he's like, um, Josh is like, let me make sure Donna's ready. And Dex is like, all right, let me get up out of here. I didn't understand that. I thought they were going to sit there and go to that Pikeman meeting tonight. Sonny was sitting there giving Dex the riot act again about Josh and who you gonna be with, me or Josh. You can't put a life in danger. The usual crap that he was doing before. But this time he wants to sit there and try to be theatric by pulling out the gun and start telling his story about Joe Scully, and he owed a lot of money. And I guess it was supposed to be some sort of teachable moment or whatever. But I'm just like, was this supposed to scare him or something? And then he gives him a gun, and for a split second I was like, I'm just imagining that, when he starts putting the bullets in the gun or whatever, he's like, he just shoots them. Obviously, he's not going to do that. But in my head, I was like, it'd be kind of interesting. Even if he did it as like, I don't know, like a what if, like he just imagined he did it. But seemed like he's going to go to that meeting, so I'm looking forward towards that. Who this Pikeman group is. It's really that U.S. Marshal looks familiar. I feel like I've seen him in a show or a movie. I can't tell, was it a good movie or a bad movie or like a sci-fi movie, but I feel like I've seen him somewhere. I'm gonna have to look him up. And of course, during that time, Nina was in there asking about like how's Willow and everything, and talked about how they got into an argument and she fainted. And of course, Josh is like, only you can sit there and argue with a pregnant woman. I'm like, what? Listen, as much as I didn't like Josh acting like a hypocrite, I was like, yeah, she has a point. Of course, Nina was like, oh well, for once, me and Carly was on the same side. I'm like, yeah, you're forgetting the part where you argued with a pregnant woman and she fell and she fainted because you couldn't have your way. Yeah, let's just sit there and skip over that. I was sitting there looking at my notes, so I was like, what is left? Oh, and of course that is the Liz and Finn part. Now, I found that part pretty interesting because as Finn is they talking about how he went to Spoon Island to look for Esme because, something about it came back following a trail of her for some odd reason. As he's sitting there talking about this, you can see the panic and the nervousness. Like, oh, why'd you go to Spoon Island for? You're not a detective. Now, at some point, Finn is like, listen, I'm just gonna get the cops. I'm just gonna get Jordan involved. And um, Liz was like, well, what if Esme goes after you? What if she goes after Violet? I'm like, listen, she's like a 19-year-old girl. I'm pretty sure he can handle her. Like, I'm pretty sure he doesn't have to sit there and worry about her. Um, but of course, she's just trying and trying and trying. Now, at some point, he looks at the prenatal vitamins. He's like, it's funny because I saw those at um Nick's house. And it seems like, Liz is thinking that he's going to get close, he's going to figure it out. And that's when Finn is like, are you pregnant? Now, I'm just like, that makes sense. I'm like, why would you sit there? Never mind. I think I actually said this week that Liz is going to sit there and lean into the fact that she's having a fake affair with Nick. This way she doesn't get discovered with Esme and holding her hostage and everything like that. So I think that's just what they're going to wind up doing, and maybe it's going to turn into something for real. And of course, Ava's going to sit there and be all pissed off, and probably Victor's going to sit there and get his way because that's just all sorts of gross that you want to sit there and go after your nephew's wife, like what they were doing and everything, and somehow you're just like, yeah, no, I can't wait to be with that. Like, that's just so gross. That is really gross. Hmm. I feel like that's pretty much about it. I can't really think of anything else that happened. This was a so-so episode. Um, I mean, the drama between Josh and Nina was kind of interesting, but it's the same way. It's just Josh, being her usual hypocritical self, um, slipping up and that they're thinking about Dex when she should be telling Cam that she's doing things behind his back. But a lot of people in the comment section was saying that most likely Cam is going to find out on his own and he's going to be heartbroken. And that's why I keep using the word, that's why I keep saying the phrase hashtag poor Cam. Because she clearly seemed like she don't care at all about him. It's sort of like, all right, that's fine. Things happen. People fall out of love. But just be honest about it. Like, and of course, like mother, like daughter, like what she said. I feel like that's about it. I can't really think of anything else that happened. So with that being said, I'm gonna go. I want to thank you for watching. Be safe, and I'll see you in the next video.